My name is Dave O'Connor. Welcome to my lightning talk. Here's why I am here in particular. So these are the mines. So I've been an SRE or an SRE adjacent person for about 20 years. Wouldn't recommend it. 2004 to 2021, I was at Google. My last gig at Google was managing the SRE teams for all of Google's storage and databases. Also wouldn't recommend that. Lots of airplane time. I left Google at 2021, which is a couple of years into what I would call the lost decade of Kubernetes. I know why you're laughing, we're still halfway through. This is the period of time I'd like to call, where everyone says we must go to Kubernetes for some reason, for reasons that we've thought of, but we're not telling you. And Kubernetes, as we know, is a fully featured suite of things that has all of its components present when you install it. So there are lots of things to kind of swap in and out and do what you want. So I since went to Elastic and to Twilio and to a couple of different places. I spent the last 2 years being freelance, working with people who are mostly doing platform-related adoption. So I have lots of war stories from there. Google's the only company I'm going to mention by name because Google is a big lad and can look after itself if it wants to fight me, whereas Thurston maybe not so much. Since June this year, I've been VP of Engineering at Astronomer, who are already on Kubernetes, so all of their problems are solved. So that's why I can do talks like this. Busy teams and platforms, and the blurb promised some stuff, some ways you can trick your customers into adopting your platform when asking doesn't work. But I'm going to start way earlier than that. Building is the straightforward part. It's the fun part. It's the part where you can go to your cloud provider and say, here's some money, teach me how to do that building part, and they will happily teach you how to do the building part. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on anything, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. The parts I'm most interested in is the first one and the last one, knowing when it's time to build a platform and selling. And I use that term judiciously. These are the two parts that are mostly skipped when people are building platforms and having people adopt them and all this sort of stuff. And so some of this mightn't apply to you because you're further down the bit. You're like, tell me about the selling part. But most of these things that I'm going to talk about can be retrofitted, right? You can go back to your customers later after you've pissed them off to say, oh, no, wait, actually, we've thought of better reasons why you should use this platform we've built for you. So here we go. Pre-platform, or what I'm going to call pre-platform. There exists a time in most companies' lives when you probably shouldn't build a technical platform for people yet. It's too early. There are competitive disadvantages to doing it. If people are busy trying to find a market for their product and you're like, no, do this, you have to do databases this way. It's probably counterproductive and you could find yourself out on the street pretty quickly in more ways than one. And so I'm going to describe a method I've used in a couple of different places, sort of loosely, when it's not time to do a platform yet, or when people have tried to do a platform and they've given up and they want to do something, they want to try something else a little more palatable. So the method is essentially sort of low effort, high outcomes. What can we do that doesn't cost too much? And that the big outcomes that you get are setting cultural norms early on. This is suitable for if you have single digit or low double digit or even medium sized double digit number of developers within your ecosystem, and you're trying to sort of set up the laws of physics, such as it applies to them. So the major piece that you're trying to do here is let people know that they're not alone, that there are people paying attention and that there are certain ways of doing things sometimes. So this is the quote I use when putting this in place, and also when talking about technical platform adoption after we've built it. A good yet oblivious actor needs to see good outcomes. So I'm a new dev, I show up, I'm a good actor. I want to do things the way that they are done. I see basic value in not going off into the weeds and doing things all by myself and making it up from scratch. How do I do that? And I can tell you that having gone through the onboarding process in far too many companies over the last 5 years, most of the time it's like, there's documentation, and you go read the documentation, and the documentation is on like a green screen. Like it's the worst, right? And so finding out what the right way of doing things is a lot tougher. And sometimes the documentation is hidden inside a person's head, and you have to ask them. So a good yet oblivious actor, i.e. a new dev, is like, I have generally good intentions. How do I put them into force, and how do I get good outcomes from that? So there's a couple of different ways to do that. The other thing you want to set up is actions having consequences. So setting up the laws of physics that are universally true. If I do this, this will happen, right? If I go looking for documentation, I will find it. If I do a stupid thing, you know, somebody or something will appear and maybe sometimes stop me from doing that. This is pre-platform, right? You don't have to build a full thing, and I'll go into some of the details here. So you want to make sure that people understand that engaging with the platform team, if there is a platform team, which there probably isn't, it might be just you, has good outcomes, that they're going to come to you, and the first conversation they have with you isn't, hey, why aren't you on Kubernetes yet? And they're like, could you shut up for a second? I'm trying to do something useful, right? So you want to get people used to the idea that when they come to you, they get something, right? They get a good outcome. And also that doing things clearly and correctly won't work. And so these are two ends of a spectrum, which I will now show you the only images in my presentation. There they are. This is a model because you know, you want to seem like it's a nice academic conference, so I've invented a TLA for no reason. So APT, advice, policy, and tooling, and these sort of follow into each other. Depending on where I am when I was contracting, and depending on the sort of cultural zeitgeist, I sometimes use ATM, which stands for Ask, Tell, Make. Which is an unfortunate because it's used by law enforcement in some places, but like these are the sort of varying things that you can do along this spectrum of like how strongly the company and by extension you feel about these outcomes. So I'll run through these. I won't take a ton of time. So this is the first step along. Everything starts here. I call this shiny pebbles. So like this is what we do. Here's how we do it. If you want to do something else, that's okay. Don't do it by yourself. Tell us about it, right? Now, one of the things that is notably missing in the vast majority of places I've been to is a means to write down what this is somewhere, anywhere. I'll take anywhere and make it discoverable. So this is what I was talking about when I mentioned the, you know, a good but oblivious actor gets a good outcome. I'm a good but oblivious actor. I want to go find the decision record for just the right way of doing things. I might want to do things differently. That's fine. We're early enough in the company's kind of progress that doing a different thing might be the right idea. But for the most part, what also belongs here is like how we do on call and incident management. So it's, you know, that's come up a bunch as well. So, you know, language choices, you know, particular design patterns and how we do things, how we do observability, kind of, these all come under the, if you're in a company that's small, you want to know like the right way of doing things, but you might want to do things differently because you might be building something different. That is fine. That is, please leave some shiny pebbles behind you so that people aren't reinventing the wheel every single time. Next up, tell. So stone tablets. So policy, this is the right way to do things. It assumes a decision record. Another of the invariants, since this is tales from the platform adoption minds, every single place I have started at in the last 5 years, I have a similar conversation with folks where I show up and say, why is this the way it is? Why is it not a more sensible thing? And people sort of look off into the distance and then look back and say, we were told we couldn't do that. And I was like, by whom? Tell me their name. And invariably, it's somebody who left a year ago, right? So, so these people are essentially scared of ghosts, right? And so it's because there isn't a written decision record, it's all sort of apocryphal. It's all sort of like a decision was made years ago and we're still bound by it because reasons. So stone tablets, this is the right way of doing things. Crucially, other ways may stop working in the future. So this also applies to as you mature, hey, there's like 2 or 3 different observability systems. We might stop paying for one of them at some point. It won't be this one, right? This is the kind of blessed one that we've decided we're going to stick with for the foreseeable. So you probably shouldn't go off and assert that you need a new one, or use the other ones if you're starting from scratch and your cost for using the incumbent one is low. And then adding to the ways of doing things requires an adult conversation. And I leave that unspecified because adult conversation is like how this works is different in every place. At Astronomer, we have an ADR, which is basically some architects get together and make a decision based off of a design doc. There are other design doc reviews that work elsewhere. But if you show up and you say, hey, everything here is sort of Postgres-y, I kind of need Redis, I kind of need ClickHouse, I kind of need other things, here's why I need it. Let's have a checkpoint, let's have a decision record of, here's why we have started using this. So databases, like how we do on-call, the tooling we use for on-call also kind of lives here. Eventually you want to sort of slowly converge, but that's not really a thing. Last up, make. So this is the brick wall. There's one way to do things. We have good reasons. Here they are. You're still kind of on your own. You build it, you run it, but here are the guardrails for you. If you do it another way, your change won't work. And that's the crucial thing. I'll give you an example of this. There should be a law they put someone's name on, which is any system that accepts sort of arbitrary text or blob, input will eventually be used as a blob store. So did you know LaunchDarkly is a blob store? I didn't until I showed up to a place and people were storing Helm charts in LaunchDarkly flags. Don't do that, right? So like many reasons why you shouldn't do that, right? If you don't have like your fully fledged, like here is the platform and we have all of this wonderful stuff, it may be enough to have some tooling such that if I'm a developer and I'm like, at my last place, I stored a 500K Helm chart in a LaunchDarkly flag and it worked just fine. The first time I do that, if 10 minutes later, the flag content is replaced with don't do that and a link to why you shouldn't do that, that's actually a fine set of tooling, and it's a set of tooling I've seen in a specific example. That's exactly what happened. We sort of said, okay, how do we let people know that you clearly shouldn't do things that way in a way that we can sort of kind of easily police in a low overhead way for us, but a high impact way for us, and it stops bleeding immediately. So it just won't. Sometimes it's also like a person shows up. That may be what you have to hand. Sometimes it's SaaS tool usage or it's consumption-based usage and retention. There was a talk from Riot Games earlier about like, how do you control consumption-based SaaS tools? How do you put in place a method whereby if somebody adds, twice the number of metrics that you're already sending to insert observability provider here, that just doesn't work, right? As opposed to somebody shows up in 2 weeks' time saying, sorry, we all get to go home now. How can you put that in place in a low overhead way that's fairly well understood, that might be a bit coarse, but that works, So a big part of what you're trying to do here is make sure that actions have consequences, right? In a way that is predictable. So because people have their notions about how production works, and if their notion of how production works is if I do something egregiously stupid, it won't work, then that's a thing. So the stuff you're trying to get to with the sort of pre-platform thing is discoverable documentation. Documentation discoverability is, I'm going to mention Google, the one thing I miss from Google, right? If I were to name one thing I miss from Google, can I find a design doc for all of my backend services that I use in my thing? Of course I can. They're there. They're linked. You can get it from a place. Like, can I find a policy for this? Yes. Can I find out who owns this service? Yes. There are SaaS things you can buy to make this better, but without exception, everywhere I've been since then has been like, just search for it in Drive, it's probably fine. Or Notion, or, oh, what was that thing that we're not renewing next year? Oh, wait, it went away, sorry. So ideally one place, regular public dialogue, having a decision record, engineering forum, guilds, all that sort of stuff. Like, this is your pre-platform. And then making decisions. I highly recommend that at some point in people's lives, they do even a short course on decision quality. I did one years and years and years ago. I'll give you the 5-second version of it. Is like, A decision is where you take one path at the expense of another. Universally, I run into places where people make decisions, and then when you run into adversity on that path, you back it out and try the other one, right? Decisions have owners, right? If you give people responsibility for a particular system, and this especially applies to platform teams where it's like, you're on the hook for doing this thing. And I'm like, cool, I'm gonna start making decisions because now I own that thing. And they're like, oh no, not like that, right? Yeah, no, you recognize that one. As a leader, one of my primary jobs ends up being showing up and saying, I have responsibility for this thing. I also own it. I can make decisions based off of it. And the decision is, I'm going to do this thing. And if you hit a speed bump along the way, I'm not going to back out because you're nervous. I'm going to move ahead and do that. So that is a good decision. It survives adversity. Anyway, platform planning, if I were to say one thing, which I may only get to say one thing about like what to do when you're planning a platform and what some of the major pitfalls are, is figure out what success looks like. Think about the before, think about the after. Before, you're on previous thing. After, you're on new thing. All your problems are solved. Are they though? What does that specifically mean? How do you define your success as a platform team? The path of least resistance then, and in many sort of junctures after that, is defining your success by adoption percentage. Don't do it. Like if I could give one piece of advice is, somebody wants to show up and say, I need to put a percentage against your success. How many people have adopted a new platform? Like by percentage, roughly, and you're like, nope, right? Because what that means is, if you define your success by that, that's what you end up going out to customers and wanting to define success by. And so I was, when I was contracting, I worked for a large non-tech company in IT, funnily enough, wouldn't recommend it. And they had lots of little companies that they bought, and they were going out and saying like, hey, all of your IT is a machine under a desk somewhere. You should probably be on, something that is not, crazy Vlad's endpoint detection and Bitcoin mining. You should be on something that's a little more, platformy. And I showed up about 70% of the way through the slog, which was essentially them saying, 70% of you have adopted it and 30% of you are redheaded stepchildren who we hate. And so we're just gonna keep on doing this, and telling you that you're bad people until you do the thing. And it wasn't working. If you ever wondered how to kill a CIO, that's how, is putting them into a position where they are trying to slog towards 100% adoption, when that's really not the point. Look at all this other cool stuff you could get. And so when I was at that place, I went and did some customer interviews, and every single customer interview basically went along the lines of like, hi, what's wrong with the platform? They're like, it's too expensive, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. What do you get from the platform? And they're like, we don't know, right? We've just been told we have to adopt it, right? Or we're bad people, right? And in this particular case, like they didn't know what DORA was or SLO was or SLA, or they knew what SLAs was, they call them something else, but whatever it is. But in an IT organization, especially a heavily regulated one, audit coverage, like security posture. Oh, we need to be NIST version 2 compliant. Okay, what if you didn't have to think about that at all, right? Efficiency, you don't have to buy servers every 2 years anymore, right? And this was a revelation to them because the people who were trying to make them adopt the platform had forgotten that there were actual benefits to adopting the platform, aside from number go up. When you're defining your success and when you're tracking your success, think about real things. Like these are real things that are affected by that. They're not all universally acceptable, but universally applicable, but think about them. So what happens when you don't hit 100% adoption? You get to sort of 80, 90, something odd percent, and you got some holdouts, and that's not great. Same thing, you still get those outcomes that you should have been tracking all along. You also get something as you get towards the 75, 80, whatever it is, adoption percentage, which you should, keep an eye on, but not use as your success. Remember the adage, It's a law, it's a named law, which I completely forget, which is any measure that's used as a target fails to be a good measure, right? And so what I find happens by itself is you run into a thing where stragglers are weird. So when you get to that sort of percentage-ish, people become stragglers. And then what that basically means is that a lot of the leadership and the folks in leadership you might be talking to, they have a couple of questions when we're talking about platform adoption, is like, what do I get for free? How much is it going to cost? Am I weird yet? Right? Because if you're 20% of the way in, adopting is weird. If you're 85+% of the way in, adopting is not weird. All my mates are doing it, so I'm going to kind of do it. Right? A certain kind of leader will respond to that. It's not a panacea, but it's part of it. The other part, and this applied to a number of things at Google, is stragglers get to hold remote. So at one point at Google, we were migrating from a version of Colossus, which was Google's, block storage, to a new version of Colossus. We got to a point where there were just abandoned code bases, people that, were just like, this will never make sense to us, all of this sort of stuff. We found the biggest customer and we said, hey, we're like 6 months out from losing interest in running the old system. Here's the keys, catch. Right? So that is an approach. It won't necessarily work for you, but you want to disappoint people in advance to the extent possible. So really do pay attention to adoption, to how you track your success. And it's these things, right? I'm doing a platform migration at the moment, and the outcome of that platform migration is we tighten our public SLAs. That's it, right? Nothing internally about anything else, just like we tighten our SLAs. If I don't hit a certain thing, which I get to track internally, then we don't tighten our SLAs, and I get a slap on the wrist. So anyway, building. Not going to cover building, yawn. Go pay your CSP to tell you how to build a platform. They'll tell you, just go to our agentic AI and tell it to build a platform, and it'll build a platform for you. I literally had somebody from AWS tell me that 2 weeks ago. So anyway, selling. Selling an internal platform is essentially platform as a service sales on easy mode, right? You're competing with the status quo, right? And again, key customer considerations. What do I get for free? When things are coming, when you're going to cover my entire use case, and I'll get onto what happens when you don't do that in a second, and am I weird yet, right? And this is, talking to leadership, and depending on the kind of leader, there are several different kinds of leaders. Some of them are very data-driven, some of them are very vibes-driven, right? And so think about, what is being thought about when you're selling this. Another part of this is that sometimes people imagine that they don't have to sell things, and you do. You have to hold your nose and say, I have to go out and do a sales pitch to my customers for a thing, right? And so they're still in a sort of a build versus buy mode, right? They can choose to build their own platform if they really want to. And in a larger enterprise, and I've seen this in larger enterprises, where you go out to like a VP of Eng and say, here's the platform that we have built. And he's like, nah, I got my own. I'm good with that. How do you deal with that? Like an external customer, they're still having to build versus buy calculus. And my own personal build versus buy calculus at the moment, yours may vary, is think about what you need to be good at. If you need to be good at this, then, do it yourself. And if not, then don't. And you probably don't need to be good at it. Anyway, I promised some tales, and I've got a couple of minutes left. So I'm going to go through some myths and things that have bitten me and others in the past. And if I am able to cover one, which I may only get to cover one, it's the primary myth. We can make people adopt the platform as a company priority. No, you can't. I have spoken to people, and I have sort of pseudo been the person who was hired, and in these sort of interviews, sometimes they tell you, yeah, no, I'm the CTO and I'll just make people adopt a platform, right? And so this is a wonderful power fantasy. And so there's a couple of different reasons why this never works. Couple of different ways. All jobs are a trap. but a job that says this as the headline for what your job is around the platform is a bad trap. Do not fall into a trap like this. You haven't been given a pass, you've been issued a challenge, right? So it's not that your CTO is saying like, you get a free pass, whatever nonsense you come up with, I will make people adopt. That's not how the world works. You've been issued a challenge. You've been told like, produce something compelling and I will help you, drive adoption within reason. And, if it's a good idea for particular things and if there's support needed, I've got air cover for you. And most crucially, and often overlooked, is think about if you really want that. Do you want to work for a company where the CTO goes out to every team and makes them do a thing? Like, even if it's a bad idea, even if they really don't want to, even if there's another thing. You probably don't want to work for a company like that. And so a good leader won't do this. And a great leader won't even promise this. So even a good leader won't even promise this. So that is a myth. That's not like, if you're in a situation where your CTO or whoever it is has said, I will help you with adoption, think about if they're actually going to, because they probably aren't. Other myths, we will get to 100% adoption. No, you won't. Make realistic promises. Some realistic promises involve, we're going to turn this thing off, we're going to remove your SLA, disappoint people in advance, even like a year or two in advance, say, we're withdrawing the SLA in 2027, all included, no backsies, and doing things that way. Sorry, I have to run through because presentations are hard, apparently. Good technology does not sell itself. If you build, case in point, Google, pre-2010, 2015, when Google's approach to customer service was, we built a thing, it's the best thing, fuck you. And so they have improved in the interim, but good technology does not sell itself. Case in point, sales exists, right? It's actually a hard job to do, right? So therefore, it does not do itself. Other things, people will wait. I've been on the receiving end of this, where it's like, hey, adopt this platform and it will suddenly support your use case in 6 months or a year's time. I'm like, first of all, no, you're lying. And second of all, no, I won't wait. Come back in a year, leave me alone. And that's a perfectly rational thing for a customer to do, and understand that customers are generally rational and want to do the right thing. Maybe for a while. And then last up, if you build it, they will not come. They will sort of think about coming, but for the most part, this again is a power fantasy. It's a thing that people think where, like, if I just build something that's so beautiful and so fabulous and nice that people will just arrive. No, it's a slog. You have to sell, and you have to have a good value proposition, and you have to be able to describe that in terms that make sense to your customers. Okay, so index, no surprises. Be physics. Be the laws of physics for production. Make sure that people understand if they do a thing, it either works or doesn't work. Report real goals. Don't get distracted by percentage adoption, because that way lies madness. Be okay with partial victory. And manage your team's self-worth at a certain point in a platform adoption, especially a multi-year one. It is time to all go home, tea and medals. We're done. We're over the hump in terms of this platform adoption. We declare victory, even though we're not 100% done. The engineer brain doesn't deal well with not 100% done, but please know when to declare victory and determine your team's self-worth by the real outcomes as opposed to percentages. So, thank you very much. I'm a little over.